All right, you modern humans. In this video, we deliver the people's budget, originally given by David Lloyd George. This is Speaking Through the Ages, where we bring back the dead in an attempt to bring out the values, beliefs, and internal struggles of those humans that came before. We give context to and deliver historical speeches that motivated people to kill, riot, make salt, and sign papers. I'm Joseph Delisle, your novice history fan. To join us, tap that subscribe button, and for notifications, ring the bell. In our last video, we covered some background on David Lloyd George. We learned he probably exaggerated his poor upbringing, but I think he really did feel closer to the lower class than the upper class. We learned that he wasn't a particularly faithful guy and was a bit of an early 1900s player. We saw a brief history of how David Lloyd George climbed to the post of Chancellor of the Exchequer in his attempt to roll out a budget plan that would redistribute some wealth, which thoroughly pissed off the House of Lords and King Edward VII. Lloyd George gave a defense at Edinburgh Castle on July 30th, 1909, in front of an audience of 4,000. Brian MacArthur, the editor of the Penguin Book of Speeches, described David Lloyd George as, quote, "a master of improvised speech. Lloyd George, with his seductive, vibrant voice, was the greatest natural orator in an age of great orators. He spoke with his audience and not to them. My platform is the country," he said, and he gave his audience a musical hall turn. He mobilized the forces of change outside Parliament as only a few, such as Cobden, Gladstone, and Joseph Chamberlain, had done before. But his driving passion was to action more than speech, to put far-reaching measures on the Statute Book, and to root out the palpable injustice he saw all around him. He was the true founder of the welfare state, unquote. And now, straight out of the history books, David Lloyd George. A few months ago, a meeting was held not far from this hall, in the heart of the city of London, demanding that the government should launch out and run into an enormous expenditure on the Navy. That meeting ended up with a resolution promising that those who possessed that resolution would give financial support to the government in their undertaking. There have been 2 or 3 meetings held in the city of London since, attended by the same class of people, but not ending up with a resolution promising to pay. On the contrary, we are spending the money, but they don't pay. What has happened since to alter their tone? Simply that we have sent in the bill. We started our 4 dreadnoughts. They cost 8 millions of money. We promised them 4 more. They cost another 8 millions. Somebody has to pay. And then these gentlemen say, quote, "perfectly true. Somebody has to pay, but we rather that somebody were somebody else," unquote. We started building. We wanted money to pay for the building, so we sent the hat round. We sent it around amongst workmen and the miners and weavers of Derbyshire and Yorkshire, and the weavers of Dumfries, who, like all their countrymen, know the value of money. They all dropped in their coppers. We went round Belgravia, and there has been such a howl ever since that it has completely deafened us. But they say, quote, "it is not so much the dreadnoughts we object to, it is the pensions," unquote. If they object to pensions, why did they promise them? They won elections on the strength of their promises. It is true they never carry them out. Deception is always a pretty contemptible vice, but to deceive the poor is the meanest of all. They go on to say, quote, when we promised pensions, we meant pensions at the expense of the people for whom they were provided. We simply meant to bring in a bill to compel workmen to contribute to their own pensions, unquote. If that is what they meant, why did they not say so? The budget, as your chairman has already so well reminded you, is introduced not merely for the purpose of raising barren taxes, but taxes that are fertile taxes, taxes that will bring forth fruit, the security of the country which is paramount in the midst of all, the provisioning for the aged and deserving poor. Was it not time something was done? It is rather a shame that a rich country like ours, probably the richest in the world, if not the richest the world has ever seen, should allow those who have toiled all their days to end in penury and possibly starvation. It is rather hard that an old workman should have to find his way to the gates of the tomb, bleeding and footsore, through the brambles and thorns of poverty. We cut a new path through it, an easier one, a pleasanter one, through fields of waving corn. We are raising money to pay for the new road. Aye, and to widen it so that 200,000 paupers shall be able to join in the march. There are many in the country blessed by Providence with great wealth. And if there are amongst them men who grudge out of their riches a fair contribution towards the less fortunate of their fellow countrymen, they are shabby rich men. We propose to do more by means of the budget. We are raising money to provide against the evils and the sufferings that follow from unemployment. We are raising money for the purpose of assisting our great friendly society to providing for the sick and the widows and the orphans. We are providing money to enable us to develop the resources of our own land. I do not believe any fair-minded man who challenges the justice and the fairness of the object which we have in view in raising this money. Have you been down a coal mine? I went down one the other day. We sank down into a pit half a mile deep. We then walked underneath the mountain, and we had about 3/4 of a mile of rock and shale above us. The earth seemed to be straining around us and above us to crush us in. You could see the pit props bent and twisted and sundered, their fibers split in resisting the pressure. Sometimes they give way, and then there is mutilation and death. Often a spark ignites, and the whole pit is deluged in fire, and the breath of life is scorched out of many of hundreds of breasts by the consuming flame. In the very next colliery to the one I descended, just 3 years ago, 300 people lost their lives in that way. And yet when the Prime Minister and I knock at the doors of these great landlords and say to them, here, you know these poor fellows who have been digging up royalties at the risk of their lives? Some of them are old. They have survived the perils of their trade. They are broken. They can earn no more. Won't you give something towards keeping them out of the workhouse? They scowl at us. We say, only a halfpenny, just a copper. They retort, you thieves, and they turn their dogs on us, and you can hear their bark every morning. If this is an indication of the view taken by these great landlords of their responsibility to the people who, at the risk of life, create their wealth, then I say their day of reckoning is at hand. The other day at the great Tory meeting held at the Cannon Street Hotel, they had blazoned on the walls, quote, "We protest against the budget in the name of democracy, liberty, and justice," unquote. Where does the democracy come in this landed system? Where is the liberty in our leasehold system? Where is the seat of justice in all these transactions? I claim that the tax we impose on the land is fair, just, and moderate. They go on threatening that if we proceed, they will cut down their benefactions and discharge labor. What kind of labor? What is the labor they are going to choose to dismiss? Are they going to threaten to devastate rural England by feeding and dressing themselves? Are they going to reduce their gamekeepers? That would be sad. The agricultural laborer and the farmer might then have some part of the game which they have fattened with their labor. Also, what would happen to you in the season? No weekend shootings with the Duke of Norfolk or any one. But that is not the kind of labor they are going to cut down. They're going to cut down productive labor. They're builders and gardeners, and they are going to ruin their property so that it shall not be taxed. All I can say is this. The ownership of land is not merely an enjoyment. It is a stewardship. It has been reckoned as such in the past, and if the owner ceases to discharge their functions, in seeing to the security and defense of the country, in looking after the broken in their villages and in their neighborhoods, the time will come to reconsider the conditions under which land is held in this country. No country, however rich, can permanently afford to have quartered upon its revenue a class which declines to do the duty which it was called upon to perform since the beginning. I do not believe in their threats. They have threatened and menaced like this before. But in good time, they have seen it is not to their interest to carry out their futile menaces. They are now protesting against paying their fair share of the taxation of the land, and they are doing so by saying, quote, "You are burdening the community. You are putting burdens upon the people which they cannot bear," unquote. They are not thinking of themselves. Noble souls. It is not the great dukes they are feeling for. It is the market gardener. It is the builder. And it was until recently the small holder. In every debate in the House of Commons, they said, quote, "We are not worrying for ourselves. We can afford it with our broad acres. Well, just think of the little man who has only got a few acres," unquote. And we were so much impressed by this tearful appeal that at last we said, "We will leave him out." And I almost expected to see Mr. Prettyman jump over the table when I said it, fall on my neck, and embrace me. Instead of that, he stiffened up, his face wreathed with anger, and he said, "The budget is more unjust than ever." Oh, no. We are placing burdens on the broadest shoulders. Why should I put burdens on the people? I am one of the people. I was brought up amongst them. I know their trials. And God forbid that I should add one grain of trouble to the anxieties which they bear with such patience and fortitude. When the Prime Minister did me the honor of inviting me to take the charge of the National Exchequer at the time of great difficulties, I made up my mind, in framing the budget which was in front of me, that at any rate no cupboard should be bared. No lot should be harder to bear. By that test, I challenge them to judge the budget. Thank you for joining us during this historical moment. See you next time, where the dead teach.